Most of the executable programs intended for command line use provide a formal piece of documentation called the manual page. A manual page usually contains a name, including a brief description of the command, a synopsis, which is a compact summary of the command's interface, a more detailed description of the command itself and of each available option, and finally a list of the command's exit statuses. But it's good to note that it will almost never include examples, as it is intended as a reference and not a tutorial. Now, as a developer, the first thing you're going to look at when trying to figure out how a command works will be the command synopsis, as it quickly indicates you what options are available and what arguments are expected. But as you can see, this notation is quite particular and requires some explanation. So here are the 4 general rules on how to decipher this expression. Boldface indicates that the text must be written as is. Brackets indicate that the content is optional. Vertical bars indicate a choice list. And ellipses indicate a repeatable parameter. Let's use the echo command synopsis as a first example. Here the command's name and the end flag are both in boldface, which means that they have to be written as is. The end flag and the string argument are both surrounded by brackets, which means that they're optional, as indeed we saw in the previous lectures that it's totally possible to call echo on its own without flags nor arguments. Finally, the ellipsis after the string argument means that the string can eventually be repeated several times, as indeed we saw that we can call echo with more than one argument. To summarize, we can therefore read the following synopsis like so. The echo command has one optional flag n and takes 0 or more strings of characters as arguments. Let's now review together a few more synopses that you will encounter in the future for this syntax to stick. For example, this command called git-commit has one optional flag m that whenever used takes a string of characters as arguments. It can therefore be executed on its own or like this. The mv command this time has 3 optional flags, f, I, and n, and 2 mandatory arguments, source and target. If you remember, the vertical bar symbolizes a choice list, which means that these 3 options are mutually exclusive, or in other words, they cannot be used at the same time. It can therefore be used in 2 ways, without options or with only one of the 3. Finally, the mkdir command has 2 optional flags, p and v, and 1 mandatory repeatable argument called directory name. Now you should be wondering why I just said that there are 2 flags and not only 1. Indeed, this compressed syntax is often used by developers to gain in clarity, as it sometimes happens that certain commands have dozens of flags and that reading this kind of synopsis would be just excruciating. Now that you know how to decipher these expressions, let's go back to our manual pages. The command to consult a command's manual page is called man and has the following syntax. Let's try it right away with the echo command. Once we've opened the man page, we can now use the arrows up and down of the keyboard to scroll and simply press Q to quit. Sometimes it will happen that when searching for a manual page like this one, for example, the following page appears. This behavior is completely normal, as this special page usually indicates you that you're trying to access a built-in's manual page. Indeed, shell commands can actually be of 2 different types, executables and built-ins. Simply put, an executable is a standalone program installed independently from your shell that usually comes with a documentation page accessible through the man command. A built-in, on the other hand, is a functionality that comes prepackaged with your shell whose documentation is accessible through the help command. So whenever this page pops up, just use the help command instead of the man one like this. And that concludes this lesson on the manual. I encourage you to get into the habit of systematically checking the manual pages of the new commands you discovered throughout this course using either the man or the help utility, as most of them have countless options that you might find useful in the future.